Hello guys, welcome back. This video we're going to explain how to steer with your feet, not the steering wheel. Steering wheel, a lot of people misuse it. They overuse the steering wheel. And a lot of people also don't understand that when we say that when people picture that you're using too much steering angle, they think that you're using they always picture that you're using exponentially more steering angle than you should. So like instead of 90 degrees, it's like 180 degrees, but it can actually be very subtle. For example, this is going to be okay. Just judge from the first two corners, turns 2 and 3, and just judge for yourself. Is this too much steering angle or too little? This was actually too much steering angle. So here we actually weren't really balancing the car properly on the brakes. Instead, we were trying to manipulate the balance of the car using the steering wheel basically too much. But as you can see, we're still trail braking, and this is also another big misconception. Just because you're trail braking doesn't mean that you're doing it right, if that makes sense. You need to you need to feel the trail brake, and the way that you feel the trail brake the most is by decreasing the amount of steering angle you use at each percentage of the trail brake. So let's say I'm at 5% brake input, and then I'm at like 20-degree steering angle. Well, if you don't feel it properly, then you could go 5% brake input, and then you could try even less steering angle, so maybe like 15, and you will feel the rotation on the brake a lot more. So this was too much steering angle, and then if we look at a lap where, okay, we have near enough the right steering angle. I'm not going to say the perfect amount because you can never really get the perfect amount, but let's go. You can sort of see how the car rotates so much just purely on the brake. Like I almost freeze my the steering angle, and it just keeps rotating. And this is exactly what we want to feel. We want to almost feel the car rotate itself when you're holding the final phase of the trail brake. This is like one of the most important parts, in my opinion, of driving, is to like almost feel how the car is going to continuously rotate, even if you hold the same steering angle. This is the feeling that you're looking for. So if we're to look in telemetry, because I understand it's quite hard to visualize, this is the two laps side by side. So we're gonna discard this corner. We're just gonna look at sector 2. So you can see the blue is the too much steering angle, and the red is the correct amount of steering angle. And you can see just instantly how much different this speed differentials is, how much you can carry into the corner. I mean, it's crazy. You can carry more speed in, you have a higher minimum speed, you also get a better exit. Like it's almost, yeah, it's like a almost quote unquote cheat code. And then again in this high speed corner, which I think, in my personal opinion, if you're gonna feel this effect anywhere, it usually is like mid high speed corners. You can really feel this effect. So if you want to practice, you could try like Road America Spa or some other high speed track with these types of corners where you really need to balance the car on the brake and not use too much steering angle. Here again, you can see how much more speed you can just carry in because you're using less steering angle. The trace here is not perfect. This is actually quite a bad trace for me, and I don't usually have that, but for the sake of just looking at this, ignore what the trace looks like, just look at the steering angle usage. You can see a lot less steering angle, but yet we can rotate the car a lot more. We can get on throttle really nice and early, and we can just push forward without understeer. So what are the negatives of using too much steering angle? Well, first off, you're going to cook the front tires a lot more than someone who's going to use the correct amount of steering angle. I have experience of building setups for some teams. I basically am a part of a. This is not self promotion. It's just to give a bit of context. I'm part of a coaching sort of like, I don't even know, like company. I don't know what you call it, like a group, and we have an association with Nexus Esports, and sometimes I have built setups for them. And the problem that I always get from them is that there's too much understeer. But it's usually not the setup that is causing this understeer. It's usually the driving, because they're using too much steering angle, not balancing on the brake, and I'm like, this is really, really understeery. So they need a very edgy, like an extremely edgy setup for them to have the correct balance, because they just manipulate the car with the steering and not the brake. But okay, let's talk about technique. How would we go about actually doing this? So the first thing that you understand is the first thing that you actually want to do. Let's just go to step by step. Let's go into a corner, right? Let's just take this corner, for example. We're just going to call it turn 2 at Laguna. I'm not calling this right hand flat out corner as a corner. Let's just take turn 2, for example. Do your normal steering angle and just go through it normally. And then place an active reset, at the start finish line, and just go through it again. This time, I want you to use like less steering angle and then freeze the steering angle at that, like at a certain angle, and it needs to be less. So your original, maybe have 10 degrees less and just freeze it. Do not add any more. Literally just hold it and just freeze it. And I want you to try and just spin, just purely on the brake. If you can't do that, you need to just keep trying. Don't try any sort of tricks on the steering. Just try and spin purely off the brake. If you can't just spin on the brake, then you don't know what feeling I'm talking about at all. You need to learn how to spin on the brake. Once you can spin on the brake, then I want you to try something in between. So go okay, I use this amount of steering angle, I froze it, and I just purely spun on the brake. Now I'll just use something in between your original and the freezing point of when you span. And what you want to feel is that when you go through the corner, the force feedback almost tenses up, or let's say it goes rock hard. I mean, obviously it depends on what base you're using, of course, but you'll feel it stiffen up, and it will hold itself in that specific angle when you're at the correct brake pressure and you're at the correct speed. It'll hold itself at it'll hold itself at the same angle. This is when you know that you are correctly balancing the car on the brake. But there's a very important but, and this is something I've already covered, but I didn't cover this part. Basically, we have okay, let's go into paint. It's just easier to sometimes draw things out, no matter how bad I draw things out, because my mouse is in an awkward place. Okay. So, okay, we're in paint. So we're told, okay, just pretend this is a really nice curve output, even though this looks like crap. We're told our brake input is meant to be like this. It's connected to the steering, which is true. It is connected to the steering. The more steering angle you use, the less brake input you want to have. That's completely true. So if my steering input graph was something, if I was to draw my steering input graph, let's see. It's this is neutral, and then it would be whatever, like this, you know what I mean? You're adding more lock and then you decrease the pressure. This is what the steering should look like. But, okay, we're taught that it's meant to look like this, but in actual fact, it never really looks like this, especially when you're correctly balancing the car on the brake. This is why some traces look very erratic, and this is the perfect example. You can see these micro corrections here, the gradient changes a lot. This is the exact phenomenon that we want to do. It's almost steps downwards like this. It's not a perfectly smooth arc down. And the more you balance the car on the brake, the more erratic generally your trace will look like, because you need to correct the car a lot on the brake. You won't really use the steering as much. So the brake trace will start to look erratic. So instead of this sort of curve, like the original curve, maybe it looks something like this instead. You have gradient changes, it looks a bit steppy. And this is exactly the sort of thing that you want to look for. And once you are doing this and you're balancing the car on the brake, then you're in a very good spot. Another thing, if you have crappy force feedback and you can't really feel it through the force feedback, there's a kind of a telltale sign, in my opinion, through telemetry if a driver's doing this or not. So obviously you have the erratic brake trace. It should look a bit more unorthodox, is what I like to say. So a lot less clean. But also, when we look at the telemetry, mind has gone completely blank. Oh yeah. So basically, we should you'll see higher percentages of the trail brake. So instead of, okay, let's go back again. I know this is frustrating to watch, but okay, so this is the original. And then let's say we started doing this, balancing on the brake. Usually you'll have a higher percentage hold on the final phase because you're balancing the car more on the brake, and you're using less steering angle, so you can naturally increase the pressure a little bit of the brake, and you'll have higher percentages of the trail brake. This is the telltale sign if someone's doing this. When I compare my telemetry to someone else and I see this is the telltale sign, in my opinion, of when a driver is correctly sort of balancing the car on the brake, and then obviously with the steps as well. This is what you want to see. So yeah, this is how you use the brake to steer, not the steering angle. I did cover this before, like ages ago, but it wasn't really this in depth. It was more just like, oh yeah, just use a steering angle. But this is why you want to use a steering angle. So yeah, let me know if that was helpful, and thank you.